Is Florida a catalyst for the rewriting of American history? Welcome back to another episode of The Adventures of CeCe and Haas. Florida is in the news again, and it's a controversial public education policy, curriculum policy.
Right. So, as you've probably been hearing all week long, Florida, their governor, DeSantis, came up with this idea to put in something called the communism bill. However, before we get into that, I just wanted to give you guys a quick rundown of a timeline of kind of what's the background on the politics surrounding public education in Florida. So in 1994, Florida legislation was passed that they have to teach African American history in the public school curriculum. During that time, there was many different things that were happening where certain things were being left out of the history. Things were being kind of reinvented, especially surrounding controversial subjects such as slavery or things that were like Rosewood, Florida, that happened. And in particular, there was one that was in Ocoa, Florida, that has to do with the voting rights. So
it was a true depiction of his story.
Exactly.
How he wanted to tell the story.
Exactly. So that brings us to 2020. So in 2020, Florida legislation passed a law that required the Commissioner of Education African American History Task Force to include the instruction of the Ocoee Election Day Massacre, which, like I said before, there was some controversy surrounding they kind of cherry-picked what they wanted to teach in the curriculum regarding African American history. And so then, and like I said, the Ocoee Election Day Massacre occurred in 1920, where it was a mob of white men that killed a number of unknown African Americans who were attempting to vote in Ocoee, Florida. And so they had to go to, the schools wanted to teach it because it was part of the history, especially the state history, and they wanted to include that in the curriculum. However, they had to go to legislation to get them permission to include this in the curriculum. And then we passed forward, and then this brings me to the other issue that I was going to mention, which was going back to the cherry picking. And one of the controversies that surrounds the inclusion of African American history in Florida law from the get-go was the fact that they felt that it created a lot of guilt and shame and anxiety for white children.
Right.
So it's been fraught. This has been something going back and forth for many years between what they're going to teach and what they're not going to teach regarding African American history.
And seriously, white shame? Why is that even a topic of discussion? I mean, white shame.
That's the question, because I think that if it actually happened in history, then it's not like you're saying that the people are necessarily bad, the kids.
Right.
But
I mean, it's like to also say that, just because at one point black people were captured and brought over to this country
against their will,
we're not gonna consistently be victims. We're gonna be able to elevate. And the hopes is that if you know your history, you won't repeat it.
Right, exactly.
Go ahead. What's next?
So going back to the timeline, like I just stated, in 2020 was when they had the whole Ocoee controversy. So now we've moved to 2022, which is when Governor DeSantis signed House Bill 7 into law, which restricts how topics of race can be discussed in K through 12 classrooms. The law requiring the African American history was included that the classroom instruction and curriculum may not be used to indoctrinate or persuade students to a particular point of view inconsistent with the principles.
Hold on. Hold on.
Let me finish that last part. The principles listed in House Bill 7, HB 7.
Okay, so persuade students and indoctrinate them? Are you kidding me? I mean, how are they being indoctrinated with their history? Now, how has everyone been indoctrinated with the history that we've been taught? That's how history works.
Yeah.
But what are you gonna select one thing that you now don't want people to know?
Yeah, once again, it goes back to the cherry picking, where they're giving you the bits and parts of history that suits their agenda or suits whatever they want to do, you know. And it's really almost a shame, because you get so much respect, as you should, surrounding the Holocaust, of the Holocaust victims, as they should.
It would be an atrocity if they tried to eliminate the Holocaust out of history.
But we had something that was very horrific happen to us as a people as well. And the United States just refuses to, you know, on a lot of parts, they refuse to even acknowledge that it even happened. They're trying to basically kind of, like I said, cherry pick what they want to teach to the white students of surrounding what was happened.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to circle back around to, on the timeline, back again to 2022, when he passed House Bill 7. And so now that the controversy surrounding House Bill 7, which we said stated about the kids being indoctrinated and persuaded to feel a certain way about what has happened in the past, in particular pertaining to African American history, there was they decided to establish, the Florida Department of Education created a work group review to review the existing African American history standards and ensure alignment with the enhancements of HB 7. So this work group was created somewhere around the end of 2022, beginning of 2023. So now we're led to 2023, and this work group came up with a couple of things that were very controversial as far as when they amended these curriculum surrounding the African American history. And the one that so that brings us to, like I said, to 2023. And one of the things that was the most controversial that this work group came up with was, and I'm just going to read this to you here. It's AA 2.3 on the middle school standard curriculum in Florida, and it reads that he examined the various duties and trades performed by slaves, example, agricultural work, painting, carpentry, tailoring, domestic service, blacksmithing, and transportation, with the clarification in your instruction that includes how the slaves developed skills which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit.
Why is that even important to add as a, you know, what is that, some type of, you know, what is the thing at the bottom of a page in a book?
A subtext. Like a subtext?
Yeah, some type of little subtext. Oh yeah, by the way, slaves earned skills. What? I mean, why is that important?
But not only that, but it's actually ridiculous, because you are literally someone else's property. So you cannot go out and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to go buy me a farm and become a farmer. Or you know what? I'm going to go make this dresses for these people and become a tailor, and I can keep all this money. And if you are allowed to keep, in some cases I have heard of where some, you know, of the slave owners or whatever did let them keep some of the money. But what can you do with the money when you're an enslaved person? You can't even go out and buy a house. You can't even own property. Right. You can't own property. Right. You can't buy any. So
what was it that happened after slavery was abolished and certain slaves had a mass exodus going into I think it was Oregon or Washington or somewhere like that, and as those people were coming over there, they were being put in jail. They were being put in jail just for existing and coming into that state. You know, come on. It goes way beyond a few skills that we acquired in order to hold up. We were still using those skills for the benefit of the American dream or the American society, or the benefit of the people who are in power here.
Right.
Come on.
Right. Exactly.
That is the biggest BS, and I'm surprised at the people, because you know who was involved in, who was a part of this work group. Oh my God. I'm surprised at them, because there were some people on there.
There were several. I don't know if several, but we know there was at least one African American who was.
There was at least one,
and he stated, I think his name was Walter Allen. I will verify that before we leave, but he stated that he did this as a volunteer opportunity, which was even worse because, like, you can't even say, hey, I did it because I was getting paid. You know, you just did it because you're basically...
For political purposes. It had to be for political purposes, and they had an agenda that they wanted to push forward, and so these scholars were pulled together in order to draft it in such a way to allow that type of thought pattern to elevate.
Exactly.
I mean, come on, guys. Is that what we're doing? Is that the country that we live in?
Yeah. So with that, I'm circling back once again to the timeline. So now we're in 2024. So DeSantis decided in January 2024, DeSantis banned the schools from offering the pilot advanced placement African American studies course from the College Board because it included topics about slavery, it included topics about the atrocities of things that have been done to African Americans throughout history, and so he banned that. And then in February of like I said, January 2024, which is this year, when he banned the college course, the advanced placement course, sorry.
Right.
And then now we're in February of 2024, which was a couple months ago, when we started hearing about Florida made the news again because a couple schools were requiring permission slips for kids to participate in African American studies programs.
Some parents, wanted this class to be taught.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And, because of it, the schools allowed it, but they had to have a permission slip. Now, the whole issue that I have there is, what are they saying? Teachers who taught enslavement, or as they want to call it, slavery, or slaves, would go to jail?
Well, I don't even think it was that. I think that and we're talking in particular with the permission slips.
Yeah.
It was strictly about African American history, like for Black History Month. It's really what it was centered around. If they wanted their kids to participate in Black history, activities or so forth, or if the teacher, like in one particular, this one teacher was reading some type of text or something out loud. I'm not 100% sure about that, but if you guys know that, you can put that in the comments. But I believe that's what it was centered. It was stemmed from something like that. And so she thought she would just send home, or he would just send home some permission slips for the kids to even be able to just, and they could have been talking about Ida B. Wells. They could have been talking about
that was a teacher trying to go around the law that had been created at that point to allow them to give out this information to the students if the parents wanted it.
But that's the other thing too that's crazy. Like, you sending home a permission slip to ask, can I talk about Martin Luther King in Black History Month?
Right.
That's almost like you sending something home saying, can I talk about the American War? Can I talk about Vietnam? Can I talk about, it's
you know what? What's next? They're going to ban schools from talking about what happened when the Pilgrims got here. Is that what's next? Native Americans were not here when the Pilgrims got here, and
they just showed up.
They just showed up and
tried to take over.
They were invading, so we had to give them smallpox, and
right?
Come on,
exactly,
really?
Exactly. Right.
Really?
So, with you saying what's next, as far as Florida's concerned, what's next is this communism bill. So here we are, April 2024, and Florida is, like you said, back in the news again over their communist bill that requiring the subject of communism to be included in the curriculum for K through 12.
Kindergarten through the 12th grade.
Right.
It's already a subject that is taught, I think, as a part of government, something like that, and that is in the 8th grade or something like that. That's a time when kids can handle a heavy discussion like that, but they want to indoctrinate. Are they using that word? And they don't, so that kids aren't indoctrinated. They want to indoctrinate kids that are in kindergarten.
They're doing the very thing that
communism conversations.
Right.
Yeah. By no means do I want to live in a communist government. But why is it? What's happening right now that has made communism the center of discussion? But I digress. Back to what's going on.
Okay, so we're gonna talk. I'm just gonna break this down a little bit and read this to you guys about what this communism bill is. Okay, so Governor DeSantis signed SB 1264, which does the following. It adds to existing communist history standards with the instruction on the history of communism in the United States and the tactics of communist movements. Okay, that's part one. Part two is that it authorized newly established Institute for Freedom in the Americas in Miami, Dade College, to promote the importance in economic and individual freedom as a means to advance human progress, specific in Latin America and the Caribbean. Okay. Then part three, this institute, which we're talking about, the Dade College Institute, will partner with Adam Smith Center for Economic Freedom at the Florida International University. And then part four enables the Florida Department of Education to recommend to the legislature the creation of a Florida-based museum on the history of communism. And then part five is it prepares students to withstand indoctrination on communism at colleges and universities.
I am just interested to know why it is a center thing that they're wanting to go so far as even to make a bill about and, to reject communism. Now, like I said, I don't agree with communism, but for everybody who is not familiar with the details of communism, I'm going to just give you a quick description on what communism is and what communists believe, right? So communism is a type of government as well as an economic system, a way of creating and sharing wealth. In a communist system, individual people do not own land, factories, or machinery. Instead, the government or the whole community owns these things. Everyone is supposed to share the wealth that they create.
But we know that doesn't always work because, you could be a doctor and then you're forced to work in certain conditions or in certain situations, and then now, you're paid a paltry little salary that's just enough for you to get by. And
we also know that the more influential group of party of that group is going to have control of all of the natural resources.
Oh yeah,
and whatever substances there is that's going to keep everybody afloat. Right. They're going to control all of that.
Right.
And without having something that allows some type of evenness for everybody to be able to get what they need, there's gonna be there's inequalities, inequities.
Right.
That's gonna happen. In that type of government structure.
Right.
So what do communists believe? These governments were characterized by one-party rule, like I just said, by a communist party, the rejection of private property and capitalism, state control of economic activity and mass media, restrictions on freedom of religion, and suppression of opposition and dissent.
Right.
So you're not. I see why. I see the importance of teaching so that we don't repeat. I'm just questioning why is it so urgent to indoctrinate or to begin to have these conversations with our citizens at a young age that they are trying to guide them away from this potential thought pattern. Do they see an increase of the Communist Party growing? in our society, or the socialist part. Well, I'm not going to mix socialist and communist, even though I have seen how what do they call it? A right-wing socialist has gone over to a communist party. But is that what's going on right now? Do you think?
Well, I do think that there is definitely something going on with how the younger generation, the millennials and the Gen Z, they are breaking out of these standards of I think that they're breaking out of these standards that we have set as far as corporate America. They realize that a lot of them are feeling like it's a scam, for lack of a better word, where, you work all these years for this company and then you get this little paltry retirement, and then, they send you off with a watch and that's all you get. And then you never get to really enjoy your life. And so I think that there's that kind of thinking that's leaning towards especially with the Gen Z, who are just basically saying, screw this, I'm not going to live my life like this. And I also think that there's also been kind of a disenchantment among younger people, because they feel like, one of the main things they're thinking about how, our resources as far as, what's happening with global warming and shortage of water, and then they're looking at all these wars that are happening, and then they're looking at how you have this generation of people who are just suffocating under student loan debt. They can't afford to buy a house, and then they look at President Biden, for example, sending billions and billions of dollars over to support these different countries doing war. And I'm not saying whether that's right or wrong, but I'm just saying that from their standpoint, they're like, and you can't help us, give us 1/5 of that to kind of reduce our student loan debt, or do something to help reduce the burden of whatever. So I think that it could be some sort of proactive, some type of, not proactive, what's the word? But some type of forethought that they're having, that this generation, we need to watch them because they're leading toward, and I'm not saying that Gen Zers are becoming communists. I do not think that. But I'm saying I think that they realize that this generation of kids are thinking differently.
I have heard the generation talking on subjects of socialism, where, the government provides, it's a more level playing field, and the opportunity is there, and everybody works for the betterment of everyone. However, I think that this particular law, or that they're signing in right now, where they're back in the news, Florida's back in the news. It's what was that word you put up? Red herring.
It's like a red herring. Yeah,
it's a distraction. I think it's a distraction from removing the where they were removing the freedoms of the people from learning about our history, as far as African American histories are concerned. And they're wanting to show that, hey, the communism, we don't want communism to happen, and now DeSantis is looking like he is a supporter of freedom.
Right.
He's fighting freedom. But yet he's taking freedoms. Those that doesn't add up. It's, what do they say? The math is not mathing.
Right. But I mean, I guess the question I have is but what I don't fully understand is what is the real issue for why they don't want people to know the history of this country? Which you can't talk about this country. You cannot talk about America without talking about black people.
That's damn near what he is enacting is damn near communistic views as it is. Because, one of the things that I told you about what they believe is they restrict freedoms and suppression of opposition and dissent.
Right? Yeah.
And I mean, that's the freedom of education.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the freedom of knowing what happened in this country.
Yeah.
What are you doing, man?
Right. So I mean, so that's
look. You sound like a hypocrite. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Sounds like a hypocrite. Sure. I'm not no real big political buff or anything like that, but I'm gonna call a spade a spade.
But it is very curious, and it's concerning because you don't want you don't want to have a false history of your country. That everybody now because it's so easy that if you erased anything about what happened to African Americans, then now you have these people who are looking at this group of black people, for example, and saying, oh, why you just can't pull yourself up by your bootstraps? Right. You have the same opportunities that I had. But that's not true, because the wealth is going to remain with the wealthy. And we all know that the wealthy tends to be the white patriarchy. And so because of that, now the white patriarchy is basically going to be, the kids that are coming behind us, and the generation Alpha, I think is what they're calling the people behind Gen Z, are now coming along and saying, oh, you know what? I don't know why these people are like this, because, and then now that opens the door for you to create things like genocide and to eliminate, to say, okay, these people are just vermin. They're just like this because, this is just how they are.
Especially once they start enacting artificial intelligence to make decisions, and they've got biases already programmed into it,
right? And
they're making decisions that doesn't take into effect all of the systematic disenfranchisement that these people experience,
right,
for centuries.
Right.
I mean, it's not just a short period of time, right, of mental programming that happened there, folks, right, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, there's been centuries,
yes,
of systematic disenfranchisement that has caused people to think the way that they do. You see it in the white community when they are walking with entitlement, and they don't see why people, other people are complaining, mm-hmm, and then you also see it, in other communities that are marginalized.
Yeah. So with that, guys, we appreciate you guys for sticking with us to the end, and we're gonna leave you with this thought to see what we would love to know what you guys think about this, and if you think that this is headed towards something that we need to be aware of, and also to think about how do you combat this. Are we gonna become like the Handmaid's Tale, where we're gonna have to secret certain books, our Black history books and things like that, so that we can know that we're not living in the Matrix,
That part.
And so, with that said, I guess we'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Peace.